Let's design the Galactic line. So I have created some spaceships and you can fly them around, but the game is actually about the crew of the spaceships, and that's kind of an important point, and I haven't created anything for that yet. I have to figure out the specifics. I figured I might as well do it on camera so that it feels like I'm doing something useful. So how do we proceed? Well, the most common way to do it is to just build the characters, put them in the game world, and start to expand on their needs. This is a very Sims way to do it. It's also the way RimWorld does it, and a lot of other games of that sort. You have these crew, or these settlers, or these people who live in the house, and over the course of your development, you just keep adding more things that they want or can do. So, The Sims, that would be your needs. The very first iteration of The Sims probably didn't have them going to the bathroom. It probably just had them eating and then leaving for work, and then trying to figure out, whether that stuff worked. And then they would add going to the bathroom, and then they would add being able to date each other, and then they would add being able to hang out in front of the TV, and then they would add being able to go out onto the town, and they would add this and that and the other thing, and then add dating, add marriage, add having kids. And in that way, you end up with a very dense final result, but it takes a long time to get there. And it's also upside down for my objectives. So that's not what we're going to do. Don't feel too sad. We'll be seeing these guys. We just don't want to see them yet. And the biggest reason for that is because they are content hogs. Those bastards. If I had to do this, I would have to implement interiors. I would have to implement people. I would have to create all the models for all of those things. I would have to create all of the randomization for all of those things. I'd have to create the AI that moves the characters around. It would be a lot of work, and it would be weeks before I had anything that was even vaguely fun to play with. Most of the fun of that kind of game comes with the fact that you feel like you know the characters. In The Sims, you often do. You just put your own characters in, your friends or your favorite people from your favorite franchise. I think that we're going to start somewhere else and move into that. We're going to start with missions. Now, missions are the medium-term objectives that give form and function to your day-to-day activities. So in The Sims, a mission would be trying to level up your music skill, or trying to get a promotion at work, or trying to date that person over there and then marry them, or trying to raise some plants in your garden. Those sorts of things are medium-term objectives. They take several days, often weeks, and over the course of that time, your daily life is changed and altered by your need to meet that objective. So if you're going to go date someone, then you're going to probably go out to meet them a lot, and you're going to invite them over a lot, and there's going to be a lot less freedom in your timetable. Similarly, if you're trying to get a promotion at work, sometimes you might want to go into work without showering or eating or whatever. But if you're trying to get a promotion, you're going to want to do those things, even if it means that other people don't get to have breakfast or use the shower. The same kind of feel here. The missions are going to serve the same purpose, but the missions have more than that purpose for me. For me, the missions affect our game world, because we have all of this stuff that gets stored when you do a mission. The people that you affect, the places that you affect, the factions that you affect, all of these things are long-term changes. And that means that the mission for us is actually, that is the gameplay. If we build missions, we will have a game, and we'll also have a wonderful framework that we can start to expand into. So once we've got the concept of missions, we'll have the concept of crew, we'll have the concept of teams, we'll have the concept of stats. Then we can start to add in the concept of those being people. We can add in the concept of them having daily lives, and so on and so forth. So basically, I think missions is a good place to start, and that's what I'm going to work on next. But how do missions work? Well, missions, the big thing about missions is that they come in large waves. If you've only got a crew of 2, then you're probably only going to take on one mission at a time, and that's going to be like introductory stuff. You really need at least a crew of 6, because in order to do a mission, you've got to assign crew to it. You've got to create a team to do the mission, and they can only do one mission at a time. Now, the rest of their daily duties aren't affected. They can do the mission and also maintain the ship or whatever, but they can't do more than one mission at a time, and that's a critical piece of the puzzle here. So if you got 3 people, You could have 3 missions and have 1 for each mission, or you could have a mission here with 2 people on it and then a third person down here on the second mission, or you could have 1 mission with 3 people on it. There's a lot of variations, and that's important. So what are missions? How do they work? Well, every mission has X points that you need to achieve. It has a Y difficulty. And basically what happens is when you generate points, they get divided by the difficulty. So, if you need 10 points, but the difficulty is 2, you need 20 points. And then, of course, you also have to take an action. So once you've actually earned all the points you need to do something. When you are trying to earn points towards an objective, it's usually based on the furniture, the equipment on the ship, and who you've got assigned. So if you're scanning planet BX9, that would be your sensors. And if you have crew attached, they would be running those sensors and knocking the difficulty down some or increasing the production of the sensors. So in that way, you could try and build up the number of points you need. Moreover, you would be able to tell right away how long it's going to take you to achieve the target number of points, because it's a pretty simple calculation. If you're only putting a point towards the mission total every day after difficulty is calculated, then it's going to take you exactly n days to finish, 20 days, 30 days, however many points it requires. And that's important because this action will not wait. Most of the time, you're going to have to take this action pretty much immediately in order to have it happen, in order to finish the mission correctly and get points for it. So what is the action? Well, that depends on the mission, but the basic idea is that the action is something that incapacitates you. For a time. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you could get incapacitated. I think it's probably easiest to show you some examples. Let's say that you're flying around on your spaceship. Yeah, it can look like whatever you want, but you have a crew, and you notice that you can immediately take missions. And that's because spaceships come with missions. The fact that you're on the spaceship immediately suggests missions. Some of those are spaceship-based. For example, maintain whatever the part that's doing the worst is, because the parts decay pseudo-randomly. How about tweak a jump drive so that you have better performance? That can be true, especially if we do something like make the jump drives decay depending on what part of space you're in, so you have to continually update them if you're going across the cosmos. You could also have something like optimize food use. Any resource, really, to reduce the amount that gets used for a little while at least. Or we could have other things, whatever we can think of for the hardware of the ship. But the hardware of the ship is not the only thing involved. There's also people. So, for example, you might have people-based missions. Train Ensign Schwimmer. You want to raise Schwimmer's stats? You got to train him. Marry 2 people. It's not just a marriage, you have to also plan it. How about you heal an injured person? Perhaps a psychological injury, since a physical injury would presumably be handled by the medbay. We could also do any number of other personal things. Create a TV show. Right? So, all of these missions have something in common. Well, they have a lot of things in common. First off is they take X points with Y difficulty, and it depends on the number of crew you've assigned, what their stats are, what sort of furniture or equipment on the ship they've got. But it also eventually turns into an action that you've got to take to finish. So if you're maintaining a part, like, say, the reactor, then you've got to take it offline at the end of your mission. Take it offline for a few days. Or a day. Similarly, with a jump drive, you've got to take it offline. And with the food use, you've got to stop using the food briefly so you can reorganize. If you're training someone, you've got to have them do something to show that they've been trained. And basically means that they grind the ship to a halt briefly. Let's start with a different one. Marry two people. That's a party that takes all day. Heal an injury. Incapacitates doctor and patient and maybe one other person. Who knows? Create a TV show. All antenna busy. And whatever this happens to be, I guess it probably depends on which stat you're training. We'll just say that he has to turn off the reactor. Why not? All of these actions will pile up, and you have to think ahead and try and figure out, will these happen at the same time? Will they happen at different times? Sometimes you want them to happen at the same time. If you're going to be taking your reactor offline, you might as well take your jump drive offline. So if you can get those to happen at the same time, great. But on the other hand, if you're going to be healing an injury and marrying two people, you're not going to want those to fall on the same day because the doctor and the patient won't be able to go to the wedding, which means you'll have to choose which of those objectives to fail. And that's the basic idea. You're going to have to go through this environment trying to choose missions and trying to assign people to them, trying to figure out what you want to do when in order to make all of them succeed as quickly as possible. Once you've finished a mission, you can reassign the people that were on that mission to other missions. So there's lots of things you can do. Of course, that's just stuff that's on the spaceship, because the real joy comes from stuff that's not on the spaceship. The universe offers an unlimited number of missions as well. Some of these will be delivered to you by your commanders. Some of them will be discovered as you gallivant around the cosmos. Any given location will generate missions. But they all have the same basic format, except that these missions inevitably come in chains. And sometimes those chains will go in different ways, depending on your choices, and also depending on your capabilities. This is a big thing here because these missions often have outliers. So for example, outliers is the wrong term. You want to scan BX7. I guess I usually call it BX9. Whatever. It's a planet. It's got some cool stuff on it. So you go there to scan it. But scanning BX9 eventually requires you to go down to the surface. That's the action you have to take. Once you're on the surface, you could just say, okay, well, after a day or two on the surface, this mission is complete. You get your points for scanning BX9. BX9 is now a planet that can show up in other missions. But you also could split this into a couple more mission choices. For example, you could have a mission where you find in this scanning, you find that there is some situation on the planet, like a storm is threatening to destroy an ancient regolith or whatever. You could have a mission to preserve the ruins, and you could also have a mission to steal or take the ruins. Now these are contrary. You can't do them both. You do one or the other. And they have different objectives. So if you're taking the ruins and you're gathering up all the pieces that seem of archaeological value before they get destroyed by the storm, whereas with preserve the ruins, you're trying to figure out how to protect the whole place and weather the storm. Which one you choose is up to you. But the point is, you often find missions give rise to missions. And this isn't the only way that happens, because scanning BX9, you know that you're going to have to go to the surface, so you might as well create missions around that. So for example, another mission might be optimize thrusters for BX9 Atmo. And how about map surface and weather? And these things would give you a tremendous advantage when you do have to take the action of going down to the surface. They might also give you a substantial substantial advantage on one or both of these missions. So in this way, you can see that we can create a chain of rather complicated missions, where we have a main mission with several parallel options that then splits into other main missions when you're done with it, and those can also have parallel options. So in this way, we can gently offer the player more and more missions, and they've got to think, do I really have enough crew to take on the mapping surface and weather option? I mean, optimizing thrusters, that takes an engineer, and the engineers aren't scanning the surface, that's technicians. So I can do that, but mapping the surface takes more technicians, and I'm using the technicians to scan BX9 already. Do I really want to slow that down? Well, it depends. Are you planning someone's wedding? So you can see it can get a little complicated, and that is the hope. So that is what I'm facing at the moment. I'm trying to figure out the best way to have these missions pop up and have them work. I may end up releasing a prototype that doesn't involve any piloting, because the piloting has nothing to do with the missions like this. Not really, at any rate. So that was my talk about the Galactic Line and what's coming next. Let me know if you have any opinions on this, and I'll see you soon, I guess. I'm not quite sure how long it'll take me. Probably not less, probably not tomorrow, but soon, I hope.